Back now with Thomas Friedman, the Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Times, is out with a new book, Thank You for Being Late. It pinpoints 2007 as the year what he calls the, quote, Great Acceleration began, ushering in a dizzying and disorienting era of change, technological, economic, environmental. Dealing with that change is the challenge of our time, says Tom Friedman. He's here to explain it right now, and I want to get to the substance of the book, but it is so closely connected to this presidential election. And you also wrote a series of columns during the campaign, very tough on Donald Trump. You called him a disgusting human being. And now you're calling the election a moral 9/11. Only 9/11 was done to us from the outside. We did this to ourselves. That's pretty apocalyptic language.
Well, you know, there's no question that we saw language used in this campaign that debased and demeaned people, George, in ways we've never seen before. Red lines were erased that I don't think will be easily restored. So this was a huge moral event. There's no question about it.
How much of it, though, was the inevitable backlash to the kind of changes you describe in your book?
Well, my book basically argues that we're actually in the middle of three nonlinear accelerations all at the same time with the three largest forces on the planet, which I call the market. That's digital globalization, Mother Nature, that's climate change, biodiversity loss, and Moore's Law, technological change. And I think those accelerations, George, have touched the two most neuralgic things that basically define us as people, our home and our workplace. So let's look at it. The accelerations in immigration that are going on. There are a lot of people out there in middle America, they go to the grocery store, and now the cashier is speaking Spanish. That's really fine by me. I love a pluralistic society, but I can understand why that makes them feel less at home. You know, they go into the men's room and there's someone who looks like a woman who may be a man. That's totally fine by me. I'm really glad LGBT people have their rights, but I can understand how that change came too fast. Then they go to the office, and now there's a robot next to them who seems to be studying their job. So the two things that most define people, their sense of home and community and their sense of work, these accelerations are deeply disrupting.
And we know that Donald Trump tapped into that. Did Hillary Clinton not do a good enough job of reaching those people and saying, we can make this change work for you?
Well, you know, to me, what Hillary missed is that I grew up in Minnesota, and I talk a little bit about that, a lot about that in the book. In Minnesota in the 60s and 70s, George, if you were an average worker, a blue-collar person, I have a congressman who I quote in the book, he said, you know, growing up in Minnesota in the 60s and 70s, you needed a plan to fail. There was so much wind at the back for the average worker. Now you need a plan to succeed, and you've got to meet workers where that anxiety is. The problem is it's not so easy. You know, my book actually has a theme song. It's by Brandy Carlisle. I thought of trying to buy it and see if when you open the book, it would play that song like a Hallmark card plays Happy Birthday. And the main refrain in that song is, I wrapped your love around me like a chain, but I never was afraid that it would die. You can dance in a hurricane, but only if you're standing in the eye. Now, I would argue that Donald Trump ran against the hurricane. The hurricane are these three accelerations. The challenge of politics today is to build an eye that moves with the storm, draws energy from it, but creates a platform of dynamic stability within it.
You see a lot of people, not just here in the United States, around the world, running with that same kind of populism. You've got,
absolutely.
Yesterday we saw Donald Trump with Nigel Farage,
yeah.
Leader of the Brexit campaign in England. You've got Marine Le Pen in France. There are two very different responses to these changes you're talking about.
Well, and the challenge is, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think anyone's quite found the answer for what you do with an average worker in a world where machines, George, have all five senses now. But that's the strategy I try to put forward in the book. That's what I'm struggling with. I think it's the essence of politics right now, because average is officially over. I didn't do that, but average got you so much more, you know, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s than it does today.
You're also saying it should call for a radical transformation of our politics. You describe yourself member now of a fourth party?
Well, I'm basically, my own politics, George, is I'm actually to the left, I think, of Bernie Sanders on some issues. I think in this world of accelerations, we're going to need better and stronger safety nets. I'd be for single-payer health care. But at the same time, I'd be to the right of the Wall Street Journal editorial page. I think we should abolish all corporate taxes and replace them with a carbon tax, a tax on bullets, a tax on sugar, and a tax on small financial transaction tax. Our challenge, and the challenge of politics going forward, is to get, I think, stronger safety nets, because this world's going to be too fast for a lot of people, George. And to pay for them, we need to get radically entrepreneurial. One side always emphasizes the radical entrepreneurship, one just the safety nets, and the two have got to co-evolve together.
We only have a few seconds left. You're not a Trump supporter. What's the one piece of advice you have for President Trump?
You know, I think the most important thing you can do is obviously be a healer, but start with the climate issue. It's so much more important than he realizes, George, because a lot of this immigration push, I just did a documentary about this in Africa, it's people being driven off the land, they're going north, they're coming our way. Don't dismiss it. It's a hugely important issue. And if he just makes the smallest gesture toward it, he will produce such, I think, goodwill on the other side.
Tom Friedman, thanks very much.